Thank you, thank you. Indeed, I am Mikko Hyppönen, and today is my birthday. Now, why is it important that today is my birthday? Of course, it isn't important, and in a way it is. Because today, the 13th of October, I'm turning 46. I'm 46 today. And that's important, because that means I was born in 1969, in October 1969. And I realized the importance of this in May when I was traveling in the United States, in California. I actually rented a Tesla from San Francisco and drove to the University of Stanford from San Francisco to give a lecture. And I gave a lecture in this building. This is the Gates building at the Stanford University campus. And of course, the Gates building is named the Gates building because it was built with the money donated by Bill Gates from Microsoft. And in the lobby of the Gates building, there's this sign on the wall to commemorate the birth of the internet and of the early work done by the professors inside the Stanford University while they were designing ARPANET. And ARPANET was the predecessor to the internet. And this sign on the wall of the Gates building is dated to the end of October 1969. So I'm 2 weeks older than the internet. I'm 46 today. The internet will be 46 in 2 weeks. That's why it's important. And I've spent my life, I've spent my whole career in trying to solve the two biggest problems we have. And the problems we have is the problem of security and the problem of privacy. These are the biggest problems we have to solve if we want to be able to give our children what we got. We all received a free and open internet. And the question is, what kind of an internet will we be leaving for the next generation? Will it still be free? Will it still be open? We don't know. But the crucial questions are the questions of security and the question of privacy. And if we want to defend ourselves against any of these problems, the first thing we have to do is to understand the enemy. To understand the enemies of our security and the enemies of our privacy. And this used to be fairly simple. When I started analyzing viruses 25 years ago for F-Secure, the enemy was very simple to define. Teenage boys writing viruses for fun. That's the enemy. That's what it used to be. And today it's much, much more complicated than that. So if we first start from the security problems we have to understand who are the hackers? Where are the hackers coming from? Who are these guys? Who are actually doing all the hacking? And we can actually divide hackers into quite distinct different groups. So for example, we have guys like these. This is Charlie Miller and Chris Walasek in their nice-looking tracksuits. Charlie and Chris are hackers, but they are the good kind of hackers. White hat hackers, security researchers, people who break security in order to improve security. People who break security but don't break the law. Hackers, but the good kind of hackers. I suspect there are people like this in this audience right now. Charlie and Chris made the headlines in July this year with the infamous Chrysler Jeep hack in which they broke the security model of a car by being able to reach the CAN bus system of a Chrysler Jeep, which means they could remotely control the car, complete with the steering and the brakes of the car. Then we have people who are breaking the law, but they might not be breaking the law to get anything directly for themselves. They're not benefiting out of their attacks. They're not making money. They're not becoming famous. They do their attacks for a cause. Hacktivists, movements like Anonymous, people who go and break the law for protest purposes or for a political motive. People who are willing to sacrifice getting caught and jailed because they believe in their cause. And while these people are clearly breaking the law and while they're clearly criminal in their actions, it's sort of easier to understand people who do this for a personal belief or for their own conviction. It's much harder to understand the next group, which are criminals, people who break the law and do hacking to make money. People who run botnets, people who distribute banking Trojans, who run illegal Bitcoin mining operations through botnets, who use ransom Trojans to encrypt people's files and then make them pay to get their own files back, people who run keyloggers to steal credit cards and so on and so on. These are petty criminals, nothing more. They make millions and millions with online crime every single year, and this is a global problem. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, because on the internet there are no borders, there are no distances, there's no geography. And while in the real world you only have to worry about the criminals who live in your own city, or maybe who live within a 100-kilometer radius from where you live, when we go from the real world to the online world, then we suddenly have to worry about online criminals who could be anywhere in the world. And we see online criminals from all parts of the world, but we see them especially in large numbers from areas where we have lots of people with skills, but who don't have enough opportunities. That's one of the explanations why we historically have found more online criminals coming from ex-Soviet countries or from Eastern Europe, or right now in very quickly rising numbers from Far East Asia, for example from Vietnam, and from Africa. We all know Africa for Nigerian scams, which have nothing to do with cybercrime. They're just traditional social engineering, but we are actually seeing an increase in real cybercrime coming out of Africa as well. And that's a great example of a location which has lots of people with bright minds, and today with access to the internet, but who have a hard time getting a job with their skills. A combination of people with skills but with no opportunities creates an environment where cybercrime thrives. And one of the things that has sort of kept us from the problems of cybercrime coming out of places like Africa has been that Africa has historically been poorly connected to the rest of the internet. In the beginning of this year, the combined outbound bandwidth of the whole African continent was roughly the same as the outbound bandwidth of Finland. Finland has 5 million people. The continent of Africa has more than 1 billion people, and yet we had the same outbound bandwidth. And this is changing right now. There are multiple fiber optic cable projects underway around Africa to connect it to multiple different parts of the world with fast connections. So they will be properly online within a year or two. And of course, we all wish that that's going to generate more prosperity and well-being for the people of Africa, but it also probably will mean that there will be more criminal access from people within that country, people with the skills but without the opportunities to have to make a living. If they can't make a legal living, they will make an illegal living. And while I may be able to fix your computer, I will not be able to fix social problems. That's the core of many of the backgrounds in cybercrime. Fixing social problems is much, much harder. And that's why this problem isn't going to go away anytime soon. There will always be bad people, people with skills but without opportunities. But over these years that I've been working with computer security, I suppose the biggest surprise to me personally has been when we suddenly realized that some of these malware cases that we were analyzing were actually coming from governments themselves. Governments writing malware. Governments launching offensive cyber attacks. Stuff that would have been something you would have read from science fiction books 20 years ago. Yet, it's clearly here today. And there is an arms race underway in the cyber world right now. A cyber arms race, if you will. And we have most likely only seen the very beginning of this arms race, where countries, governments, intelligence agencies, and militaries are building better and better offensive capability for their own purposes. And then the last group I'll mention here are extremists and terrorists. I did a fairly large study into the online offensive capability of real-world terror groups a couple of years ago, 3-4 years ago. And the outcome of that research back then was that this is something we don't have to worry about yet. But I ended my research paper with the sentence that obviously this situation isn't getting better, this situation is getting worse. And that's exactly what's been happening over these years. And now, especially with the rise of Islamic State, we are getting closer and closer to a situation where we might be seeing terror attacks done online, attacks where people actually get hurt, and they are done with the aid of computers and hacking. So quite a wide range of different attackers. And we have to understand from the victim point of view, which are the most relevant attacker groups targeting ourselves. This is known as threat modeling or attacker modeling. This means organization thinks through, okay, this is what we do. Which of the various attackers would be most likely to hit us? So let's take an example. Let's go and walk downtown Tallinn, and we'll see a restaurant, a pizza place in Tallinn. All right. Well, that's a company. From the point of view of that company, what's the most likely attacker to attack their computer systems? Do they have to worry about foreign nation states to launch targeted APT attacks to breach the security of their network to steal their secrets? For a pizza place, no. Like even if they make great pizzas, nobody's going to steal their recipes with a targeted APT attack. They don't have to worry about targeted governmental attacks. Do they have to worry about Anonymous launching a protest against their restaurant, maybe defacing their website? Probably not, because these guys pick their targets. They have a beef with someone. They have a problem with some organization, and they want to protest against that organization. And I can't imagine what a pizza place would have to do to make Anonymous angry at them. Do they have to worry about criminals? Well, they have payment systems, they have payroll systems, they have credit card data, they have payment terminals. Absolutely they have to worry about criminals. And they really should focus their resources against that attacker group. And this is different for different kinds of an organization. For example, a defense contractor would have to worry about foreign nation states. An oil company would have to worry about hacktivists, and so on. So threat modeling is the key on how to effectively use your limited resources in fighting the right problem. But are we missing someone from this group? Who's missing? What kind of a hacker group is still out of the picture? Well, what about this guy? His name is Martin Winterkorn. He used to be the CEO of Volkswagen until last month. What was Volkswagen doing? Well, clearly they were cheating. And the way they were cheating was with software. They had programmed their cars on purpose to lie and cheat. How is that not hacking? It's very close to the other kinds of attacks we see here. Yes, it's coming from a different angle, but I would claim that companies as the source of attacks is clearly a coming trend, and Volkswagen is far from the only example. For example, Lenovo now has been caught 3 times shipping laptops with built-in back doors in the software shipped on their laptops, which is what we call a dick move. You really shouldn't be doing that. That's a technical term, dick move. You can write that down. Or companies like Sony. Sony, which has been doing these dick moves over and over again. For example, 10 years ago or 9 years ago, they were shipping music CDs. Music CDs, which would work fine when you listen to them in your CD player. And for the younger in the generation, we used to listen to music from spinning discs, which we used to call CDs, before Spotify. And if you would use your computer to listen to CDs, so you would open up your CD-ROM tray. I still have a CD-ROM right here. And you would put the music CD inside your laptop. It would actually infect your laptop. A Sony written backdoor would execute from the CD, install itself on your Windows or Mac computer, install a driver which was programmed to prevent you from copying music CDs, and install a rootkit which would protect this driver. And that rootkit would actually install a backdoor on your computer which could be used by malware writers to hide their code on your system thanks to Sony. Clearly a dick move. And by the way, one of the artists on whose music CDs this rootkit was being shipped on by Sony was Celine Dion. And I have friends who have told me that, if you listen to Celine Dion, you deserve to get infected by a rootkit. But that's not me, that's my friends. And then what about companies like this company? Ashley Madison, clearly an unethical company. Just unethical in their business, like cheat on your spouse on our system. How unethical is that? Well, pretty unethical. But also unethical in the sense that they were selling a service where if you got second thoughts about being a customer of this site and you wanted to have your name and account removed from their databases, they were selling you a service. You paid $19 and they would remove your information from their database. And the peak of their lack of ethics was that they would actually take your money and they still wouldn't remove you from the database. And we know this because, of course, the Ashley Madison customer database was leaked 2 months ago. If you actually take the customer database and map the IP addresses of the customers on the world map, that's where the customers were coming from. Plenty of customers here in the Nordics and Baltics as well. But let's go back for a moment, back to Charlie and Chris, the car hackers. Now this is the exact car they hacked. And this is actually an example of system working right. Because Charlie and Chris, yes, they were able to break the security of this car, but they also were able to fix the security of this car. The way they actually hacked it is that this car has a entertainment and navigation system in dash, which has maps and navigation systems and can play music and stuff like that. That's actually an embedded system which is connected to the internet. And the way it's connected to the internet is with 3G LTE connections. So it has a mobile phone or a modem of a mobile phone built into the dash, which means it has a SIM card in the dash. So it actually had a SIM card inside the car. And that SIM card was from a US telco operator called Sprint. And what Charlie and Chris did is that they got a laptop, installed a SIM card from the same operator, from Sprint, and then port scanned the internal IP range of Sprint addresses, and they found that you couldn't reach these cars from anywhere else, but if you had a SIM card from Sprint, you could actually scan them and find them and do port scans on them. And then they found a remote vulnerability in the navigational system, so they were able to reach the navigation system, and within the navigation system they found another vulnerability which enabled them to reflash the navigation system. And once they had reflashed the navigation system, they could do anything they wanted within the car's CAN bus. And CAN bus is the internal bus which controls pretty much everything in the car, including the engine, including the brakes. And that's how they were able to break the security of this car remotely. They could be anywhere on the planet, Well, they had to be somewhere with Sprint coverage. So they had to be in the United States. And the car had to be in the United States. But otherwise, anywhere within continental USA, they could take over any car. And what they did with this information is that they went to Chrysler. They went to Chrysler already in February this year. And they told Chrysler all this. We've broken your security. Here's how we did it. Then, crucially, they told Chrysler that here's the information. Now you know. Now we are going to tell the world everything we just told you. And we are going to tell the world in August. Now you, Chrysler, you now have 6 months to fix this. Please fix it before August because we're going to tell the world in August. In August, in the beginning of August, there's the Black Hat DEF CON hacker conference in Vegas. They wanted to have a talk on this there. So Chrysler got to work. They figured out the problem. They created a fix for the problem, and they shipped the fix in July, 2 weeks before any of this became public. System worked. Security researchers, the good kind of hackers, found the vulnerability, told the vendor, responsibly told the vendor fixed it and shipped the fix. System worked. But let me just play you a video to illustrate what it actually means when your car is taken over by remote hackers. Let's turn up the audio.
After their stunt on the highway, Chris and Charlie still wanted to show me a couple of other tricks. Below a certain speed, they can control the Jeep's steering as long as it's in reverse, pop its locks, mess with the speedometer, and, of course, disable the brakes.
Okay, hold on tight. Hold on.
Here in the red shirt is Charlie getting into the car. Walking away in white t-shirt is Chris Valasek. At the time when they did these hacks, Charlie was working for Twitter. Chris was working for a security company called IO Active. Right about the time when they made all this research public, they were both recruited by the same company. Today, both Charlie and Chris work for a taxi company, a company called Uber. Uber hired both Charlie and Chris. This happened in August. And I was a little bit surprised, frankly, quite a lot surprised when I heard about this. Of course, I heard about this on Twitter, as most news nowadays break on Twitter, and I sent my congratulations to Charlie and Chris. Great, great. But I was still a little bit confused. Like, hold on, why did Uber hire these guys? Arguably two of the best car hackers on the planet, hired by a taxi company. Like, what the hell? So then I went to the Uber recruitment pages. And I was sort of expecting Uber to be mostly hiring drivers and, I don't know, sales guys and marketing guys. And I was completely wrong. They are mostly hiring engineers. They're mostly hiring engineers, not drivers, not sales guys, engineers. They have 12 engineering centers around the world, 4 of them in USA and 8 of them everywhere else. 1 engineering center in Italy, 1 engineering center in Lithuania, and they are hiring guys like FPGA design engineers or machine learning specialists. Machine learning specialists, that's artificial intelligence. Uber is hiring artificial intelligence engineers. Uber is hiring chip designers. A goddamn taxi company is hiring artificial intelligence engineers. So what does this tell us? Well, it tells us quite clearly that Uber wants to get rid of the drivers. They want to do what Google is doing already, build self-driving cars. In this case, build self-driving taxis. Apple, the rumor is that Apple is doing this as well. Apparently Tesla did an announcement yesterday that they will start shipping self-driving Teslas. And I'll tell you something, I can't wait for self-driving cars to be a reality. I can't wait to get rid of traffic jams. So we've been living too long in a world where we try to drive our own cars, and we suck in driving cars. We just suck in driving cars. And when cars drive themselves, our traffic will change. It's going to look different. Cars will no longer hit each other, and pedestrians will know that the cars won't hit them. So they can just walk anywhere in the traffic. And I can't wait for this to be a reality. So you can go anywhere in the traffic. Nothing's going to happen. Of course, you're going to have a heart attack every time you go to traffic. But that's what future of traffic is going to look like. Now, of course, oh shit, oh, okay. Now we will be, there's no point in me talking while the video is playing, because you're not going to hear anything while I'm playing it. And to get there, to reach that level, and by the way, this is photoshopped, it's not real. It's actually it's done with After Effects by a guy in Argentina. Nevertheless, to get there, and I suppose we all want to get there. I mean, that looks great. We all wish traffic in downtown Tallinn would look like that tomorrow, but we're still a little bit far away. We have a couple of things to do, like better artificial intelligence, better robotics, better self-driving cars. But these are very, very exciting times. We are all so lucky to be alive right now during these critical years, during which, first of all, we all got online, the mankind got online. And before we die out of old age, we will see self-driving cars, we will see artificial intelligence, we will see real practical robotics in use, real robots doing stuff that used to be only in science fiction books. And the thing that bothers me about robotics is that when you go online to YouTube and search for any videos about robots, the thing that we people always do to these robots is that we push them around. Like, sort of like demonstrate just how versatile they are. Especially Boston Dynamics, they like to kick their robots. And this is sort of like, I think it's a mistake. I think it's a mistake to kick the robots. Like, if you want to remember anything out of the talk today, it's don't kick the robots. Just don't kick the robots. Boston Dynamics is now owned by Google, so this is a Google guy kicking a robot. And the problem here is robots are getting smarter. One day, robots will be smart enough to go to YouTube to watch videos. And then when robots will go to YouTube to watch videos, they will see these videos of their grandfathers getting kicked around by a guy from Google. And then they will go and find the guy. You know, it's sort of like a basic evolutionary mistake to kick the robots. Don't kick the robots. That's my personal advice on the topic. And it would be almost like funny to be scared of robots if it actually wouldn't be tragic. Because this summer, there was actually the first case, for real, where a human being was really killed by a robot. This happened in June. Sad story. A man died. And as a coincidence, this actually happened at a Volkswagen factory. It actually had nothing to do with the diesel problems, of course. But the robots they use, like any modern car factory today, would use a series of automated robots which build cars. And the poor engineer who died was doing maintenance of one of these robots, and he just went to the wrong place at the wrong time. The robot wasn't programmed to kill him. The robot was programmed to do his work, and he just got in the way. But it does give us ethical problems to consider, because that robot is a computer. And that computer is running software. And that software was written by somebody. So who's at fault when somebody dies in the hands of a robot? When we have self-driving cars and they will run over a little girl on the street, whose fault is it? Is it the car's fault? Is it the programmer's fault? Is it the fault of the CEO of the company who built the car? Is it the agile team member who was running the team that built the navigational system? We don't actually have answers to these questions. And there's a deeper point in this. which is that we used to consider, we computer security people, we used to think that our work was to secure computers. Like our job was to secure these, right? That's what we thought we did. That as a computer security guy, I'm securing computers. Well, this isn't true anymore. Our job today is not to secure these things. Because our whole society is being run by computers and by software today. We have lights in this room because of computers and software. There's clean water coming out of the taps because of computers and software. If you already had lunch today, that lunch was built in a food processing plant where everything is being controlled by PLCs, by computers, by software. And our job as computer security people is not to secure the computers. Our job is to secure the society, to secure everything around us, because everything is running with computers. This has already happened. This isn't something which is going to happen in the future. It has just happened. That's where we are living today. And new stuff keeps happening all the time. There's quite a bit of talk about drones nowadays. Exciting developments. Many of you have played around with these things. They get amazing video feeds nowadays, complete with 4K streaming out of a drone that you can fly anywhere, including you can fly it at your neighbor's yard and have a look at what your neighbor is doing, which instantly creates privacy violations. But there's a solution for this particular problem. So if you are bothered by drones in your yard, I suggest you visit this website called dronemunition.com. They actually sell shotgun shells that you can put in your gun just for shooting down drones, right? Isn't that neat? So dronemunition.com, highly recommended. So drones are sort of like small planes or small choppers, I guess. And planes have been in the news this summer as well because of security problems. And planes obviously aren't computers, they're planes. But what I just said about our society running on computers applies here as well. These things are flying computers, just like our cars are data centers on 4 wheels. And the reason why plane computer security was in the news this summer was this guy, Chris Roberts. Let me just play you a clip of Chris speaking with Paul Osadorian earlier this summer.
Yes, there's a nice control box under the seat that has a modified Cat5, Cat6 jack under it to make friends with the in-flight entertainment system.
I see. But that's the in-flight entertainment system. That should have nothing to do with the airplane controls, correct?
You would hope and you would think.
But that's the in-flight entertainment system. If you can connect to that, that should have nothing to do with the plane control system. You would hope and you would think. Because that's exactly what Chris proved. He proved that while modern planes like Airbus and Boeing planes have various systems, they're actually interconnected. So if you can connect yourself to the in-flight entertainment system, you know, the screen which is running at the seat back of every seat, if you can connect to that, you can actually reach from there, that network, the firewall separating the entertainment system and the avionics systems. And the avionics systems actually control the rudders and the engines. So then the question becomes, how do you actually connect to the entertainment network? Like obviously there's a computer system running the entertainment and the movies and the maps that you can access from the seat back, but how do you actually connect to that? And the answer is you have to pick your seat correctly. I took this photo on a flight from Amsterdam to Helsinki. I chose the seat 4C. That's where I'm sitting. That's where I took the photo. And this box here is under seat 3A. And that's the in-flight entertainment system computer. That's the one you want to access if you want to gain connectivity to the network. It's actually closed by 4 screws. So if you open up those screws, then you get an exposed PCB, which has connectors, which are non-standard. You can't plug in Ethernet or USB. But if you actually solder your own connectors, you can connect to the PCBs, and it will give you DHCP. You will get an IP address, and you will be online in the entertainment network, and from there you can reach the firewall, and all Boeing planes have a firewall with the same credentials and the same password separating the user from this network from the avionics network. Now the real question left here is, how do you actually do that? Like, if you are in a plane, how do you actually go about opening up a box like that without the rest of the passengers screaming bloody murder? And I don't know how Chris did it, but I know how I would do it. The way I would do it is that I would pick the right seat, then I would wait for the plane to reach cruising altitude. Then when we've reached the cruising altitude, I would open up my bag and I would take out a high visibility vest. You know those yellow vests worn by maintenance people? And I would put it on. Yellow high visibility vest. Those are really handy because those high visibility vests are actually invisibility cloaks. When you wear one of those vests, you're invisible. You can sort of imagine yourself sitting at an office, working at a computer, and then somebody walks by, somebody you don't know walks by, but he's wearing one of those vests. You're like, he's probably doing something. Right. So if you want to go anywhere, do anything, the first thing you do is you wear that vest. Then the next thing I would do is that I would tell the person sitting next to me that I'm really sorry, but I have to do some maintenance during this flight. Sorry for the inconvenience. And then I would start opening up the box. That's how you do it. Now, I actually don't know Chris. I've met him once. But it's quite clear to me that he's not a maniac. He wasn't doing this to crash these planes. He was doing it to improve security of these planes. I'm not worried about Chris. I'm not worried about hackers trying to crash our cars or to crash our planes. Most hackers are not interested in killing people, and it's also illegal to kill people. Most hackers are interested in making money with their attacks, or they're white hat hackers interested in securing systems. But yes, we do have this new threat of extremists which have better and better offensive capability, and this is unfortunately the kind of group that might be willing to do attacks which make no sense and which would actually kill people. Now, we haven't seen anything like this yet. We haven't seen cyber terrorism. But clearly the situation is getting worse, and it's especially getting worse with Islamic State. And every time I see footage, videos like this of Islamic State, I only wonder about one thing. And that thing is Toyota sponsoring these guys? They're always, every single time, they always drive Toyotas. Toyota pickups and Toyota Land Cruisers. Now, one of the guys in one of these cars is this guy, Junaid Hussain. He's actually a British guy. He used to be a fairly regular hacker, living in UK, doing website defacements and things like that. And then he disappeared. We lost track of him. 6 months later, we found him from Syria. He had moved over to Syria, joined ISIS, changed his name from Junaid Hussain to Abu Hussain al-Brittani, and started tweeting threats to the governments of the United States and United Kingdom. And 3 weeks ago, Junaid died. Died in an unmanned drone strike launched by the United States military. So United States military did a targeted drone strike with an unmanned aerial vehicle to kill a hacker. Let me repeat that. United States military did a drone strike to kill a hacker. Doesn't that sound like a line from a science fiction book? And it happened 3 weeks ago. Of course, he was a bad man. There's a point from the audience. In general, I have the comments in the end, but the point here was that there was no due process in the killing. Absolutely true. Nevertheless, if you join ISIS and do hacking in their name, you really shouldn't be surprised that you get targeted with things like this. But there is a clear legal problem when UK governments or US governments are in some cases killing their own citizens without court cases. And this isn't actually the first time where hackers or computer security people get killed for their skills. There were cases related to the Iranian nuclear enrichment program where some of the computer security people whose job was to fight infections like the Stuxnet infection were killed in car bomb strikes, targeted car bomb strikes, while they were trying to protect their networks. And this makes me a little bit uneasy because, I'm a hacker. I'm a computer security guy. I don't like the idea of hackers and computer security guys getting killed for their skills. Now, granted, I don't work for the ISIS or the Iranian government, but nevertheless, the idea, makes me wonder, and it's bothering me somewhat. Now, if we move from extremists and other similar movements to the average online criminal on the net, many of these guys who make money with online crimes are becoming more and more open about their attacks. They're not really worried about getting caught. Many of them actually even advertise their illegal services in the open internet or in YouTube. Let me play you one ad clip I got from YouTube for a denial of service botnet through which you can buy attacks. Pretty slick ad. Epic DDoS interface. I like that part. And that's a botnet through which you can launch attacks to take down websites, which of course is criminal. So don't use this service. Don't go and buy an attack. But you can actually see these guys advertising these openly on the web. Another good example on how online attacks have become more like a commodity is that many of the ransom Trojans like CryptoWall and CryptoLocker are actually operated today by crime gangs who operate them in an affiliate model. So the guys who write the actual ransom Trojans, like these, which will encrypt your files and ask for money to get your own files back, the guys who wrote the software are not the guys who actually infect the victims. They sell the software, or in some cases, they rent the software to other online criminals who then do the actual crime of infecting someone. But just writing the software isn't illegal in most jurisdictions. Actually infecting someone with it and encrypting their files is clearly illegal. So these guys are trying to distance themselves from the crime by operating with an affiliate model. And the mega trends that made CryptoWall, Crypto Defense, and CryptoLocker, and Reveton, and Urusuai, and all these other ransom Trojans possible was that these guys built the know-how to how to do crypto right. The encryption they use here is either AES or RSA implemented correctly, so there's no way to decrypt your files without the key. And the other mega trend is virtual payments, in particular Bitcoin, so they can actually get the ransom to themselves without getting caught. There's no way to follow the money in these cases. And these have become big headaches for us security people. I guess the good news regarding ransom Trojans is that if you get hit by one of these and it encrypts your files and the files in your company's network, if you actually pay them, if you actually pay the ransom, they will send you a program which will decrypt your files, so at least they are honest criminals. And they sort of have to be honest because they need a good reputation. And the reason why they need a reputation is that, of course, all the victims, as soon as you see this on your computer, the first thing you will do is that, well, from this computer you can't do anything, but you go to another computer to search for help. You know, Google for like, how do I decrypt CTP locker? And you will find that there's no way to do it. They're implementing the crypto right, there's the key is only with the bad guys, and you will find earlier victims who will tell that their experience, you know, our company was totally hosed, our network was encrypted, we didn't have backups, but we paid the ransom and we got our files back. Highly recommended, would do again. 5 stars. So that's why they need a good reputation, so the earlier victims will convince new victims that it actually works. And if you pay, you will get your files back. And this problem isn't just a problem with computers. These are screenshots from a Windows computer. That's where you would expect to see ransom Trojans, right? Well, we've seen ransom Trojans on Mac OS X. We've seen ransom Trojans on Android systems. We've seen ransom Trojans on goddamn Samsung smart televisions. Your smart TV getting locked by a ransom Trojan. And let me tell you a secret. Whenever someone says that they have something smart, what you should hear is that they have something exploitable. So for example, I have a new smartphone. I have a new exploitable phone. I have a smart watch. I have an exploitable watch. I have a smart TV. Exploitable TV. Smart car. Exploitable car. That's the way you should think about it. Another secret, whenever someone tells you about cloud, I'm putting files in the cloud, I'm using cloud services. What you should hear instead of the word cloud is someone else's computer. I'm putting my files in the cloud means I'm putting my files on somebody else's computer. I'm using cloud services. I'm using services on somebody else's computer. That's the way it works. There is no cloud. There's no cloud. When you put stuff in the cloud, you're putting it on somebody else's computer, and you better trust that someone else, because you're putting your files on his computer. They can do whatever they want with your files. So what does the cloud actually look like? Actually, what does it look like? Well, actually it looks like this. And I don't mean, you know, the clouds here, I mean this. That's a Google data center. This particular Google data center is in a village called Summa in a city called Hamina in Finland. It's the only Google data center in the Nordics. It's in Finland. Internally, they call it Google's Russian data center. It's 70 kilometers from the border of Russia. It wasn't built in Finland for Finnish users. It was built for the massive user base in Russia, but for some reason Google doesn't want to build it in Russia. So they took it as close as they could without actually going to Russia. And Google has a chain of these data centers. One was built in an old paper factory. There's actually a funny story behind when Google bought this factory. This was owned by, I believe, UPM, forest groups in Finland. Had existing cooling system, existing backup power, massive areas. And when Google was interested in buying this facility, they actually set up a company in Finland called, I believe, Tuulimylly Finland or something like that, which had nothing to do with Google. It was just a front-end company, so nobody would know that Google is considering setting up a data center. And then this company, which had like 1 employee, goes into negotiations that we would like to buy this paper factory. Like, why would you like to buy this paper factory? Well, we would set up a data center in the paper factory. Well, then the sellers were like, well, we could probably sell you, a corner of one of the halls for your data center. And then the representatives were like, actually, we're going to buy the whole place and we're going to build extra floors inside of it to get more space for our computers. That's how big a data center will be. And that's what they did. They've expanded it twice now. And the amount of money Google puts into their data centers is ridiculous. If you look at Google's financial figures, you'll find out that every quarter Google invests more than $2 billion into their data centers. That's billion with a B. Every quarter, $2,000 million into the data centers alone. Like, forget about the salaries, forget about other investments, just the data centers. And that's per quarter, so 4 times a year, $2 billion. One side effect of these investments is that Google is now the 4th largest manufacturers of PC servers. The 3 others, the 3 before Google are Dell, IBM, and HP. But Google is number 4. And that's remarkable because Google doesn't sell servers. Google builds so many servers for their internal use that they're the 4th largest manufacturer on the planet. It's ridiculous. And it's especially ridiculous when you consider what is Google's product, like Google Search, Google Maps, Gmail, YouTube. These are all free. You don't pay a cent when you use these services. So you would think that when a company invests $2 billion per quarter only into their data centers and the product is free, you would think that a company like this would be going bankrupt, right? Massive investments and the product is free. But Google is not going bankrupt. On the contrary, it's very, very profitable. Last year, they made $16 billion in profit, not revenue, profit. $16 billion in profit. And that nicely illustrates how valuable our data is. You paid nothing for Google services in money, yet somehow they made $16 billion in profit out of you. It's sort of like a magic trick, isn't it? And the reason why these services are so valuable is that they are able to distill and profile us so closely. And don't get me wrong, I love Google. I think Google's products are excellent. I have many friends I know who work nowadays in Google. They really have great products, really excellent. I just wish I could pay for their products with something else than with my privacy and with my data. But I can't. You can't pay for their services with money. The only way you can pay for these services is with your privacy and with your data. And Google isn't alone with this. It's exactly the same model with Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or any of these other services which are free. And the way you should think about free here is the same thing, same way you think about free lunch. It doesn't exist. There are no free social media systems. There are no free cloud storages. There are no free search engines. There are no free webmail. They don't exist. The only things on the internet which truly and really are free are things like, Linux kernel. That really is free. But most of the things which are labeled free are far from free. And the best way to see this by yourselves is to go to one of these services for once, not as the user, but go there as a customer. And I recommend for the students in the audience, this is your home assignment. All right? Go to Google, Facebook, Twitter, get your credit card out, and buy an ad. It doesn't really cost you much. It's going to cost you $1 or $2, so you can actually afford to do this. And buy an ad. Go through the process of buying an ad in an ad-funded network. And this will open up your eyes. Because you will see how closely these services are able to profile the users, how well they are able to target the ads. For example, Twitter. Now, I like Twitter. I have 110,000 followers on Twitter. It gives me a very, very good way of getting my message out. But I don't like the way Twitter profiles their users. And when you go to Twitter, not as a user, but as a customer, you go through this process of signing up for an ad. And there's things that you wouldn't be surprised to see. Like, you can target your ad based on location. I'd like to show my ads to people who live near Tartu, for example. I'd like to show my ads to people who are male. I'd like to show my ads to people who use Twitter with an iPhone or an iPad, for example. And of course, Twitter knows all of this. They know where you are. They know a little bit about you based on your profile. And you can also target your ad based on interests. Like I'd like to show my ads to people who are interested in gardening or books or cars. And this isn't surprising either. Of course, Twitter knows what you're interested in. If you, for example, follow Formula One teams on Twitter, then you're probably interested in car sports. Of course they know your interests. But it gets weirder. When you follow the wizard through making an ad, then you get targeting based on demographics. So for example, you can show your ads to people who have 2 children or 3 children or 4 children. So Twitter knows how many kids you have, which is a little bit weird. Obviously, they can't see that from your tweets or based on who you follow. Or Twitter knows how much money you make. They know your income, which is a little bit weird. Or Twitter knows what kind of cards you have in your wallet. So for example, you want to show your ads to people who have Visa, and Twitter will immediately tell you that there's 5,180,000 Twitter users who have a Visa in their wallet. So they know exactly who's who. Or you can target your ads based on what people buy. So for example, they buy outdoor sporting gear or women's fashion, and they even know who buys normal-sized women's clothes and who buys plus-sized women's clothes. 944,000 Twitter users buy plus-sized women's clothes, and you can show your ad to those. You can select women in Tartu area who buy plus-sized women's clothes. And the question now becomes like, where the hell is this coming from? Like, how does Twitter know that I'm buying plus-sized clothes? And this information isn't coming from Twitter at all. This information is actually collected by data warehouse companies. Data warehouse companies. What are those? Well, they're companies you've never heard of. Companies with names like Datalogics or GPG or Accumetrics. They collect consumer behavior information, and they collect it from the real world. They buy this information from shops. They buy this information from credit card companies. They buy this information from insurance companies. And then they build profiles of you and me based on our real world spending patterns. And then they sell these profiles to companies like Twitter. So Twitter actually bought this information from a data warehouse company. And then they connected this real world spending information with your Twitter account to make it easier to market you to advertisers. And then the question becomes that, hold on, how does Twitter know that my real world profile here is this guy on Twitter? How do they make the connection? And the answer is they make the connection with your mobile phone number. This is the reason why services like Twitter ask for your mobile phone number. That's the unique key which connects your real world identity with your online identity. That's how they know that this guy in the real world who lives in Helsinki, who buys a lot of beer, is actually this guy on Twitter who follows Formula One teams, and so on. And I believe that this mobile phone number idea is the reason why Facebook bought WhatsApp and paid $22 billion for WhatsApp. They didn't buy WhatsApp to get a chatting service. They bought WhatsApp to get the mobile phone numbers of hundreds of millions of existing Facebook users. So they could target them better, so they could profile them better, so they could sell them to advertisers better. And you know what's the worst part of all of this? The worst part is that this is all legal. This is all okay. There's nothing wrong in any of this. And the reason why there's nothing wrong in any of this is the biggest lie on the internet. So what's the biggest lie on the internet? The biggest lie on the internet is I have read and I agree to the license agreement. We have all approved this. They've told us exactly what they're doing. They've told us that we will profile the hell out of you and we'll sell you to advertisers. And we will buy your customer spending information from data warehousing companies, and then we will combine it with your online identity based on your mobile phone number, and then we will sell that to advertisers. Do you agree? Yes, I agree. That's what we do. And we know, of course, that nobody ever reads these. We know that you lie every single time when you click on I agree. And we know that you lie because we tested this. Last year we set up a free Wi-Fi hotspot downtown London. You would get free internet access through F-Secure Wi-Fi hotspot. You only had to agree to our terms and conditions. And somewhere in the middle of our terms and conditions we mentioned in passing this thing about your firstborn child. In the event that you have no children, you have to give your pet to F-Secure Incorporated. And I really think we should have gone and collected the kids and the pets. We didn't do that, but you can sort of imagine us ringing your doorbell. Ring, ring, hello. It's us from F-Secure. You might remember that you agreed to give your child to us. So we came to pick up Jamie. Hello, where's the little Jamie? And of course there would be families who would be like, yes, please take our children. But we didn't do it. And despite of this clause, everybody used our Wi-Fi hotspot. Everybody clicked, I agree. Everybody did it. Now, I already mentioned how we security people shouldn't be thinking about securing just the computers, but about securing the society, securing the infrastructure around us. Which brings us to the discussion around IoT. IoT. You can't spell idiot without IoT. It's true. Internet of Things and connected devices. Many people think that this is something coming in the future. Well, nope, it's already here. Has been here for quite a while. And you can easily see that it's already here by just going online and scanning for IP ranges. And you will find surprising things from the internet. You will find microwave ovens completely unexposed on the internet. You will find coffee machines. You will find doorbells. You will find toasters. You will find light bulbs. But even more worrying than household appliances is that you will find infrastructure online, like factories. So for example, scanning the net, you will find this. This was exposed on the internet, running VNC with no username and password. Seems to be some kind of a power generation device with 14.6 kilowatts of power. You really shouldn't put this online. Especially, you really shouldn't put it online with VNC, with remote desktop enabled, without a password. That's just, a bad idea. Or this, that's a dam. That's a dam. I mean, dams which, hold water. Why would you put a dam online? Like, why would you put the computers that control a goddamn dam online? And why would you run VNC on it with no username and password? But that's happening. Apparently it's in Denmark. Or this is from Sweden. This is actually a food processing plant. I don't actually know what you call this. In Finnish we call this Kallen mätitahna. They make this thing you put on. Do you know what I'm speaking about? What is it? Kalle Kaave. Okay. Yep. So you sell it over here as well. I think I saw it in the breakfast table this morning actually. Well, that's the factory where they make it, and they have it goddamn online. Like, why would you put this online? Like, why would you have it online? Why would you have remote desktop running on it with no username and password? Good questions. Hard to find answers. Yet, this is a reality. You go and do port scans, you'll find these. And you will, in fact, find light bulbs as well. Internet-connected light bulbs. Bulbs that you can fit into any socket. And then they will connect to your Wi-Fi network. And then you can use your, remember, smartphone to connect to your smart light bulb. And you can turn it off or on from your phone. Isn't that great? We live in the future. The problem is that this particular light bulb, yes, as you might guess, had a vulnerability, a remote vulnerability through which you could actually hack the light bulb. And I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. Like, who cares? It's a goddamn light bulb. Like, who would want to hack a light bulb? It's a light bulb. Like, there's nothing on it. It's a light bulb. So even if there's a vulnerability, so what? Well, this particular vulnerability didn't just let you access the light bulb. It actually enabled you to steal the credentials to the Wi-Fi network. So the hackers are not hacking the light bulbs to gain access to the light bulb. They are hacking the light bulb to gain access to your corporate network. The hackable IoT device is not the target, it's a vector. The hackable IoT device is not the target. It's a vector. It's a way to get in where you want to go. And now imagine for a moment yourself in the position of an IT admin in a large enterprise where you have thousands of employees. Historically, you had to secure their computers. Then over time, you realize that you have to secure their computers and their smartphones and their tablets. And at some point, you realize that you also have to secure the copy machines, because the copy machines are computers and they're online. Well, now, the next time you go and do patching, also remember to patch the light bulbs. Because there might be an employee who has just taken one of these light bulbs and screwed it into the office lights and connected it to the corporate network. Remember to patch your light bulbs. Remember to patch your light bulbs. We've created a monster, haven't we? Sometimes I wonder. So what about then the governments and governmental attacks? The first governmental attacks that I worked with were 12 years ago, quite a long time ago. And those were from these guys, from the Chinese. And by the way, take a look at how these guys march. I've seen your army march. It doesn't look like that. Neither does the Finnish army. It's pretty neat. So the Chinese have been hacking the rest of the world for 12 years. But of course, they aren't alone. We have seen governmental offensive cyber activity and governmental malware writing also from Russia, from the United States, from Iran, from North Korea, from India, from Pakistan. You don't have to be a superpower to gain credible offensive capability in this world. And the vast majority of these cases that we've investigated are not what you could call cyber war. The media likes to use the word cyber war. I don't even know what it means. Actually, I don't even know what cyber means. Most of the attacks that we've seen are not about offensive attacks to destroy something. Most of these are offensive attacks to steal information. And there's a word for stealing information: spying. And information has changed during our lifetime, or at least during the lifetime of some of the older of us in the audience. Because information used to look like this. Information used to be physical. Information used to be printed on paper, right? Plans, drawings, and maps were on paper. And if you wanted to steal those maps and drawings and plans, you had to go where the paper was. You had to physically go to the paper to steal the paper or copy the paper. Like, this is what spying was about. You had to go there. Well, information isn't like this anymore. Information is virtual. It's data. It's on our computers, which means you don't have to go there. You can reach the information from anywhere in the world without physically going on location. And this is the reason why intelligence agencies around the world are so excited about offensive hacking, because they can do spying without physical operatives, without moles that they have to put into organizations. One example of this governmental spying is this report that we published last month. It consisted of almost a year of research from our analysts. And in this 40-page report, we detail one offensive attacker group, which we call the Dukes. And they've been using a family of 9 different malware for years to launch offensive attacks for intelligence gathering purposes. And these attacks already started in 2007. And they are continuing to this moment. They are active right now. This group is active today. And we believe that this group is from the Russian government. We believe this is an intelligence gathering operation run by the Russian government to support political and diplomatic decision making within Russian government. And one telling detail about this Dukes operation is that many of the individual operations have been outed before. For example, last year we published a paper on one of these 9 malware families, which we call Cosmic Duke. And what was really interesting to watch the reaction of the team behind the attacks when we put out our report, because our report detailed everything. Like, here's how the group works. Here are their working hours. Here's how large the group is as far as we believe. Here's the servers they use. Here's the IP addresses of the servers they use. Here's the malware they use. These are the hashes of the malware they use. This is the encryption keys they use. We exposed the operation. It was nothing. They continued operations like nothing had happened. No changes. Did not change the encryption keys, did not change the servers, didn't change nothing. No shame. They were just outed and they changed nothing. Now think about this. If you're doing attacks like these, which are obviously criminal attacks, you're hacking computers and stealing information. Yet when you are outed, you don't do anything, which means you feel untouchable. These guys think they are untouchable. These guys know that no matter what we do, they will never be caught. No matter what we do, they will never face trial. They will never go to jail. What does that tell us? It tells us that they are the government themselves, or they are working for the government. They are untouchable. And by the way, this same family of Duke malware is the same malware which actually infected systems in the White House. We actually haven't been able to prove this ourselves. This is based on research coming from our colleagues. But it's the same malware family. Russian malware infecting computer systems in the White House. Computers like that. What is that actually? Seems to be a Dell. Dell Latitude, maybe? Maybe E-series? What do you think? Maybe E6430? Running as an operating system, what do you think? Windows XP? Service Pack 2? Something like that. The information on this particular hack, like I said, we couldn't prove the connection between Dukes and the White House hack. That information actually came from a company which works in this building, one of our colleague companies. This is the global headquarters of Kaspersky Lab, Kaspersky in Moscow. And Kaspersky made a startling announcement in May. Kaspersky told the world that they've been hacked. Security company told the world that they've been the target of a security breach. In fact, one of their engineers who was building advanced prototypes of new detection capabilities compiled a test version of a new prototype on his development system. Then he executed the prototype on his own machine, and it found an anomaly from his own memory, from the computer of his own development system. And he was really confused, and he went through the source code again, he compiled it again, and he still found an anomaly from his memory. So then he gave a copy of the test prototype to his friend, who ran it on his production system, and it found the anomaly from there as well. And then they started realizing that this isn't a bug in the code. They actually were owned. They were actually hacked. We believe this hack was a foreign government. We believe that this Russian security company was hacked by the Israelis, by the Israel government. And it's quite remarkable that Kaspersky actually made this all public. We have to give them credit for telling the world. Most companies would have never tell anyone when something like this happens. And I often get questions about whether we can trust Russian security companies or Chinese security companies or even American security companies. And whenever I hear those questions, my answer is always, who cares? You don't need to trust these guys, you can trust Finnish. Now, seriously speaking, of course these companies have connections with their own governments. Of course Kaspersky has connections with the Russian government. Of course McAfee and Symantec have connections with the US government. At the very least they have customer relationships. That doesn't still mean that they would put in backdoors knowingly into their systems. We've never been able to find backdoors purposely put into any of these. But I'm not surprised that people are wondering about the reliability of products like these, not really during peaceful times, but during time of crisis. And I guess I should be lucky that I'm working for a security company which is coming from a neutral country, as neutral as they come. Very few people are worried about getting hacked by the Finnish government. Now, President Obama himself actually addressed these Chinese worries last month as he was speaking at the NSA headquarters in Fort Meade on the anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. He had an audience of cyber warriors. These are NSA analysts who launch offensive cyber attacks. And he was taking questions from the audience. One of the questions was about China. Let's hear what he answered.
And so, for example,
can we turn up the volume?
Getting a visit from President Xi of China, a state visit here coming up in a couple of weeks. We've made very clear to the Chinese that there are certain practices that they're engaging in that we know are emanating from China and are not acceptable. And we can choose to make this an area of competition, which I guarantee you we'll win if we have to.
We can choose to make this an area of competition, which I will guarantee you we will win if we have to. That's Commander-in-Chief of the United States Army having high level of trust in the capabilities of their offensive cyber troops. But excuse me. But not all of these capabilities come from within the military itself. Especially in the United States, big part of these skills are not in the government's hands, but they are in the private sector, within the hands of defense contractors. Some of the largest companies in the United States are defense contractors, and they are making a killing by selling services. Oh, that was a slip of the tongue. I don't mean a real killing. I mean a lot of money by selling services of cyber offensive capability for their own government. What kind of companies? Well, companies like Boeing or Lockheed Martin or Northrop Grumman. Let me play you a TV ad from Northrop Grumman detailing what they call full spectrum cyber. Full spectrum cyber.
At Northrop Grumman, we've been developing new ways to execute the mission. What once was seen now stays undetected. Where alarms were once raised, now there's silence. With our full spectrum cyber capabilities, our military can eliminate enemy threats at the push of a button. That's the value of performance. Northrop Grumman.
America. That's the value of performance. With our full spectrum capability, full spectrum cyber capability, full spectrum cyber. What does that even mean? Like, what does full spectrum cyber mean? It means nothing. It's just gibberish, right? gibberish. They are selling gibberish to the US government. And of course, what they're aiming for is disruption. The disruption of our systems as we know them. Disruption of computer systems of their enemies. After 25 years in this business, I guess nothing surprises me anymore. But sometimes I do stand back and wonder about what a long journey it has been. From the early days of malware spreading on floppy disks, all the way through these evolutions of hacktivism and terrorism and criminal enterprise, all the way to governmental malware writing, where even friendly countries are deploying offensive malware against each other for espionage purposes. But if you want to remember one thing about this lecture, it's that please don't kick the robots. Thank you very much.
Please, would you also make a video? And I think we would give some energy back to Mikko, and let's stand up and sing the most famous, most sang song in the world.
Oh, the copyright-free song.
Yeah, it's copyright-free now. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Mikko. Happy birthday to you. We still have time for questions. Please.
Thank you. I'm Lisa Past, and I work for the NATO Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence. And every time we talk about these more or less loosely connected, politically connected organizations in cyber defense, everyone says, well, you know, next year we'll figure out attribution and then we'll know how to actually go back to it. And I've heard it for as long as I've worked in technology. And it's clear that attribution, both technically but also politically and legally, is a central question. What's your prediction for where attribution will develop in the next few years?
Well, as you noticed, I just made a claim that Dukes is made by the Russian government, right? The way I said it is that we believe it's by the Russian government. And we are a private company. It would be very hard for a government to make that claim. We can make the claim because we're a private company. And even us have to use these weaselly words that we believe it's the Russian government. We don't actually believe, we know it's the Russian government, but we can't say that out loud. And the attribution continues to be the main, or the lack of attribution continues to be the main reason why governments are interested in offensive cyber capability at all. It's probably the best part from their point of view. They can do these effective, cost-effective attacks, and they can always claim that it wasn't us. Because you can always follow the tracks as long as it leads, and you'll find the last hop in the IP space, and they can still claim, well, yeah, that's in our IP space, but we were hacked and someone else was doing it from our IP space. So deniability is always there, and we will never get rid of that. And that is one of the main reasons why governments are so interested in offensive use of cyber arms or cyber espionage tools.
In between, can you tell some words about the mobile devices and what's happening on them?
Sure. So mobile platforms, I guess they were a success story in many ways, because 10 years ago when we found the first mobile malware, back then running on Nokia-based systems like Symbian, we were convinced that it's going to become as bad as on computers. And clearly we aren't there. I mean, today, yes, there is mobile malware, but the problems are far, far lower than on your computers. But that's regarding security. Privacy problems are actually very common on mobile systems. Privacy problems from surfing the web or using applications. As you know, app stores are full of free apps. Many of those make their money by profiling you, just like these websites profile you. And that's why we've actually seen the biggest increase in our product growth ever in our mobile products. Well, for example, our mobile hybrid VPN, which we call Freedom, which really is more a privacy-enhancing tool than a security tool. But the fact remains, it's still clearly more secure to surf the web with your iPad or Android tablet than with your Windows or OS X computer. Let's have your question.
So what bothers me the most on using Facebook, Google, or Twitter is that you either press I have read and accept, or you press the back button. So in your London Wi-Fi experiment, did you have a I do not agree button?
That's a good point. The reason why we lie that I have read and I agree is that if we don't agree, we don't get the service. We can't install the app, we can't use the service. And we don't have the time or the skills to read the legalese. So there's no way out. And in that test, you could click I don't agree, but then you wouldn't get onto our Wi-Fi hotspot. So there's no easy solution for this, unfortunately.
I just get a request from Twitter. Add your phone number to safeguard your account. Just a notice, which I will not do.
So that's where they ask for your mobile phone number, right?
Yeah, just now.
Okay.
Like I was tweeting about this conference,
And it's interesting because it actually will give you better security. You're actually swapping security for privacy there. You will get two-factor authentication for login in Twitter by giving your mobile phone number, which is good for your security, bad for your privacy. I don't know what we should do. Maybe we should all get a burner phone, just like drug traffickers use separate phones, so it's harder to track them. If you want to keep your privacy, you have to have burner phones in each pocket. So.
As well, and I wanted to ask, there is a situation when governments try to hack other governments, sometimes successful, sometimes not, but the main victims usually are ordinary people. They suffer from banking system corrupted or other stuff. Were there any, at least, tries to secure end users from this between governmental fights and wars in cyber world?
There's a separate problem, because I spoke a lot about intelligence gathering. Well, those are targeted attacks. That's the kind of attacks you get hit if you are the prime minister or a military leader or a key engineer at the defense contractor. Then we have a separate problem which is surveillance, and that's something which affects everybody. You don't have to be anyone special to be targeted by surveillance. And the most typical use for surveillance is to collect our communications, even though we're not suspected for anything, and just keep it forever. Because today's computer systems can easily save unlimited amount of data. So if a foreign government can collect all of your text messages or all of your WhatsApp messages or your Facebook posts or your email history and just save it forever, they will, because some of you might become a person of interest 20 years from now. Some of you might become a political leader or end up in a leadership position in an important company, and then these foreign governments with surveillance capabilities like this can go back and figure out who you really are and what have you been doing for the last 20 years and what list of your Google searches for the last 20 years. How embarrassing would that be? And they will find something incriminating or something embarrassing from your communication history, which means they have a way of twisting your arm. So even if you feel right now that you have nothing to hide, we know nothing of future. You might become someone who's important in the future, and then they will be able to use your history against you. And the best thing we have against that is encryption. Like Edward Snowden said, encryption works. Encryption, especially with easy-to-use tools like hybrid VPNs running on all of our devices all the time, make this problem a smaller problem. But even that's not going to really fix everything. So we still have a lot of work to do. Yes.
I have a question again concerning governments. During the Cold War, there was always worries about the doomsday machine that would actually ensure a retaliation for sure, even if you get a deadly strike. Do you think actually that nowadays we could expect similar approaches used by governments, like let's say putting some logic bombs into key infrastructure? And then the risk of accidentally actually triggering this kind of devices.
Yeah, it's. I hope that we won't see those for the reason that if you build a kill switch into your devices, don't be surprised if someone else pulls it. It might be someone else than you think using that capability or that doomsday device. And automatic retaliation could easily be misused by an attacker. Just reroute your attack through your enemy. Then your enemy's enemy will attack your enemy and you don't have to do anything at all. So I hope we won't see automated cyber retaliation systems by any government. But the rules of engagement are still very much up in the air. And I believe that the cyber arms race will still get much, much busier until we get into any kind of discussion about real harm reducement in this space. This race has only started. It's going to go on for decades, I believe. All right.
Does F-Secure use Huawei products, or would you sanction the use of Huawei products at F-Secure?
Huawei, coming out of China, they have a bad rap, but there's actually very little evidence of them backdooring their equipment. I suppose it's a very similar question to what I was saying earlier about Kaspersky and McAfee and Symantec. Yes, Huawei is very close with their government, but then again, so are many other technology companies. I have friends who have investigated some of this Huawei router firmware in detail, and they have found vulnerabilities from there which could be used as backdoors, but even they were unable to distinguish whether it really is a backdoor or simply shitty code. Could be either one. And in fact, it's kind of clever tactic to leave your backdoors in your system by writing such a shitty code that you can actually exploit themselves by yourself later. But we actually don't have any Huawei infrastructure in our network. That's not really a statement on anything, it's just a fact. I don't think we've made any conscious decision to avoid it either.
The last question.
Last question.
You have to rush for the airport.
I had to be here early this morning, so I actually flew from Helsinki. I timed the flight from the moment when we left the airstrip until we landed. It took 19 minutes and 1 second. And I couldn't come last night because I was busy very late. It took me much longer to get to the airport than to fly here. So, yes.
I want to ask you two questions, actually, because my friend can't. She's writing about e-voting, and she wants to know your thoughts about electronic voting. And my question is also about the big data and the data mining, how the government can use that in their good purposes, and if it could affect on a bad way their citizens.
Right.
Thank you.
So please, 1 more hour we have.
Well, in order to have e-voting, and of course I know you guys do e-voting, but there's lots of countries around the world which still don't, and many of them probably never will. And I suppose the first question to ask when you start implementing e-voting is that what is the problem you're solving? So for example, in Finland, we don't have e-voting. We vote on paper ballots regularly. And when we vote on paper ballots, we get the results in typically 2 hours, 2.5 hours after the voting ends. So by implementing all that with e-voting, we would get the results faster. We might save an hour or 2. Is that really a problem? I don't really see the problem that we're trying to solve by moving into e-voting systems, because then we will lack things like recountability in reliable ways and so on. And another note I've made about e-voting systems is that if there ever is a perfect example of a government project where the programs written within the government project should be open source, then voting would be that example, so that citizens can actually read the source code of the system. Like, how does this actually work? I mean, if you ever need open source for anything, then voting would be a prime example of that. And when governments buy voting software systems from companies, that should be the first thing to have on the contract, that whatever you ship to us has to be 100% open source, so our citizens can read what your code does, so we can trust it. Then the question about big data. Well, whenever I talk, I know that people come out depressed. It's like, oh shit, that was horrible. I will never go online again. I will never buy anything online again. Now, that's not my message. I'm not trying to tell people to stay away from the internet. Internet has changed the world. Internet has brought us so much good, so much better connectivity, so much better business, better entertainment. But yes, it has brought us new risks. And the same thing applies to big data as well. There are clear, great benefits in big data and big risks, new kinds of risks in big data. And it's hard to understand all the new risks that we are exposing ourselves with new technologies like these. And it's hard to understand the risks we are exposing ourselves by living our lives online, because we are the first generation that does it. It's sort of like we're test subjects in a global test where we put people online and track their whole lives and see what happens. And if it goes wrong, then it's too bad because we already did it. Big data can be used in great ways to find, for example, sickness patterns, like who gets sick and why over generations, or find completely new kinds of business opportunities for companies. But at the very same time, it can be used to do levels of tracking that we couldn't believe possible. And we can, I guess one very typical use for big data that people run into all the time is that when they make a Google search and they start typing and they type the first 3 characters and Google guesses what you're trying to type. Like Google knows what you're thinking, which is spooky and scary. And it's based on big data because so many other people like you that fits your profile have searched for that before. So most likely that's what you're going to search anyway. And it's really spooky, especially when you make searches like, how do I know I have herpes? And so many people have searched for it already, and you fit the pattern, so Google knows that's probably what you're searching for, and you're like, oh shit. And that's my answer. Thank you very much.